The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I did not expect to enjoy this movie as much as I did. I was so wrong when going in there. I'm hoping this is going to be better than the first one. It was so much better than the first one. It's so good, in fact, that even though I reviewed the Amazing Spider-Man one yesterday for you all, I'm going to go back on my rating. I gave it a 7 out of 10, and it barely made the 7 out of 10. But now thinking about it, and also comparing the two, I can now say that it is a 6 out of 10. It's just not as good, not in the leagues of Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man 2. So, let's talk about what The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is about. There's so many things going on in this movie, and that's maybe one of the negatives that a lot of people are seeing in this. It's just a convolution of a bunch of different story arcs coming together. To some people that's a negative, but to me, I was mostly into most of the story arcs, and I didn't feel like it was that much to catch up with everything. One of the few story arcs that I didn't like was the Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. Are they going to be together? Are they not? Peter Parker is having a hard time trying to decide, I'm Spider-Man, she's in harm's way, I promised her father that I wasn't going to be with her, and that's a big part of this. And I was just like, that's kind of a little bit old. But other than that, every other story arc I was into. One of the other story arcs that I hear a lot of people aren't exactly for is about his parents. You learn more about them. You learn basically everything that they were standing for. They kind of alluded to in the first movie, but now they actually released everything that they were talking about. And I thought that the way that they executed this, Peter Parker had to do some research to find out exactly what was going on first to get to the information. And where he goes, I thought that was kind of cool. And I enjoyed that. And it's a much bigger picture of what's to come and basically what the problem is. Now, we also have a slew of villains here. They've hyped up 3 villains: Electro, Green Goblin, and Rhino. Rhino isn't really there. He's kind of like a teaser of, once again, what's to come. This movie kind of felt like that. It was all building towards something. And it kind of, they're talking about that because it's Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the battle begins here. So they're kind of leading towards that. So Rhino is not really there. Green Goblin and Electro are there, but Electro is definitely the main villain. And my goodness, I have not seen a good villain like this in a long time. He is probably the most threatening villain I've seen in any comic book movies. DC, if you include DC, the Joker is a threat to Batman, and so is Bane. Bane's like, in The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, Joker and Bane are excellent villains, but they're more set in a more realistic world, whereas I find that the Marvel movies, even though it's like Sony, Disney, and Fox that own the rights to all these different Marvel properties, they're all more comic book, more in a fantasy comic book world, which I really enjoy because they're more lighthearted, and you can kind of get away with a lot more supernatural things because that's what comic books are. Now, Electro is such a threat to Spider-Man because they portray him in such a different way. He's so, how do I put it? They have music that plays, and they did an excellent job with the music throughout the entire film. But they play this music that's just, a problem is arising. I kind of think about it when Gravity from last year, when the problem would arise in that movie, they would play this music. And every time that you would hear this music, you knew that something bad was going to happen. And that's what happens. You start hearing music, and you're like, something bad is going to go wrong. There's a big scene here, and it just amplifies the intensity of what they're trying to portray. And I love that about this. Electro by Jamie Foxx also. As Max Dillon, he's like this guy that's kind of like a wimpy character. Nobody knows about him, and he really wants people to care about him. So you kind of feel for him. I felt more for him than I did Connors, who you're really supposed to care for in the Spider-Man universe. He's just, he has a family, and he's normal, but when he turns into Lizard, he's kind of crazy. In The Amazing Spider-Man, I was just like, he's there. And as the Lizard, he's supposed to be like super menacing to Spider-Man. He wasn't. I wasn't at all afraid that Spider-Man could not win against him. Electro is completely different. He's so powerful, and his voice is just that much more. You pay attention to him when he's talking because his voice is so, they change it up, and it's done so well. He looks really cool, and he's electric. I mean, he's electricity. That's a threat. Another thing that I very much enjoyed about this movie is that they showed the Spidey sense powers. Like Spider-Man, one of his biggest things is that he's aerobatic. He can do a bunch of crazy stuff, but he also has spider sense, and they used it in a way when he first meets Electro, which is by far my favorite scene, is when they first have the encounter of Spider-Man versus Electro. And Spider-Man uses his spider sense to kind of see what's about to come, and he's like, okay, I gotta do crazy stuff to stop anybody from getting hurt. And I was just like, that's how you do spider sense. That was awesome. The humor in this movie also is phenomenal. Like, they would have this big intense battle scene where you first meet Electro and they have the battle, and then they also have humor. There's a part with firemen. It's so good. Another thing too is that when Spider-Man also, what I enjoyed about the first movie is that he uses his mind. He's very intelligent. He's like almost a scientist. He's kind of like Batman in that sense, that he has all these powers, but he's also very smart and he can create gadgets. And he's trying to figure out things to kind of combat Electro. And when he's doing that, there's so many things that are, I just really enjoyed it. So humor is spot on with this. And Andrew Garfield, he was a main complaint in the first movie because I did not enjoy him in The Amazing Spider-Man. But he stepped up his game in this. I didn't mind him as Spider-Man in this one. His humor was more Spider-Man-like. He wasn't prancing around and dancing. It was more exactly like the Spider-Man that he's supposed to be. Talking humor, but also like protecting people. He also did gain a bit of weight. He's actually a little bit more muscular in this, which was a big problem for me in the first one because he was so slim. He's still pretty slim in the suit, but they've modified the suit a little bit so it's more like the classic style, and I like that about it. I just wish that he fitted into the suit a little bit better, but I very did enjoy it. Him as Spider-Man as a whole, and Peter Parker. And last but not least, I'll talk about Harry Osborn, who I thought was going to be just like this emo kid. I saw the trailers, I was like, I don't care for him. He's good. He probably has the best character development in the entire movie, and I really enjoyed him. You kind of see he has this problem, and he's also friends with Peter Parker, and he kind of wants to be like away from Peter, but then as he becomes friends, like we see the friendship that they have, you get to kind of feel for his character a lot more than I felt like any of the other characters. Like the Lizard I did not care for, Dr. Connors I did not care for in the first movie. For Harry Osborn, I really felt for his character, for what happens to him throughout the entire film. And it's just, they did it very well, and I like what they're leading to for the ending of the Spider-Man series, I guess, what they're eventually heading towards. I'm really excited is what I'm getting at. So, as you can probably tell, I very much enjoyed Spider-Man 2, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. That's my final rating, and it's the highest rating I've given of 2014, so it's my favorite movie of 2014 at the moment. So, you've all been bearded in. And one last thing, the post-credits, don't get too excited about that. I got super excited for it, and it's not what you think it is. It's cool, but when you first see that, you think of something. And it's not that. I read up on it, and I don't want to be like Debbie Downer, but it's not what you would think, what you would assume when you see this scene. So, you've been bearded in. Thanks for all for watching. Beardage.